The night they kicked me out, it was 27 degrees outside. I remember because the frost had crept up my windshield just hours earlier, and I had debated whether or not to bring a blanket in my car. I should have listened to that voice in my head, but I didn't expect I'd be sleeping there. The porch light flickered above me as I stood on the front step, a duffel bag in one hand and my laptop in the other. My father didn't say a word. He just held the door open while my mother stood behind him with her arms crossed, like this was some kind of intervention. But there was no addiction, no betrayal, just disappointment, theirs, not mine. "You can stay in a motel for the night," my mother said coldly. "We'll talk later when everyone's calmer." But I wasn't the one yelling. I hadn't slammed the cabinet doors or accused anyone of being selfish. All I had done was remind them, gently, painfully, that I was the one paying the mortgage, and I was tired of being treated like a guest in my own house. And that was the last straw for them. The door slammed behind me. No hug, no explanation, not even the courtesy of letting me take my favorite throw blanket off the couch. I stood there, staring at the empty driveway, still expecting someone, anyone, to open the door and say they'd made a mistake, that this wasn't real. But it was. It had started with small things, muted glances at dinner, that uncomfortable silence when I walked into a room. My brother, Michael, whispering with his girlfriend in the hallway. I should have seen it coming. I should have known that loyalty had a shelf life in this house, and mine had already expired. I opened my phone and searched for nearby hotels. Everything decent was booked. The only place under $100 looked like it had bed bugs in the reviews. So I sat in my car, turned the heater on low, and tried not to cry. It wasn't just the cold that stung. It was the memory of every dollar, every sacrifice I'd poured into that house. The early mornings. The second job I picked up to cover the renovation costs. The weekends, I skipped vacations just to repaint the guest bathroom. The guest bathroom they now let Michael's girlfriend use exclusively because she needed privacy. I clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. It wasn't fair, but I'd spent my whole life trying to be fair, trying to be good, trying to earn their love in ways they never asked my brother to. And now they had shown me exactly where I stood, outside. But what they didn't know, what they never cared enough to check, was that I had already moved my name to the deed last fall. Quietly, legally, permanently, because somewhere deep down, I think I always knew this day might come. I leaned my head back against the car seat, closed my eyes, and made a silent promise to myself. They wanted me gone? Fine. I'd be gone, but they wouldn't be staying either. I used to think my parents loved me the best they knew how, that they just weren't the hugging type, or maybe they were too tired, too burdened with bills and bad luck to show affection the way other families did. But as I got older, I realized it wasn't exhaustion. It was choice. I grew up in a small town outside Salem, Oregon, where everyone knew everyone, and secrets didn't stay secret for long. My father worked part-time as a mechanic. My mother juggled cleaning jobs and late-night shifts at a retirement home. We weren't poor, but we weren't ever comfortable either. There was always something broken, the car, the sink, the mood. From the time I could hold a broom, I was cleaning up after everyone, folding laundry, washing dishes, babysitting my brother, even though he was only 3 years younger. By the time I was 11, I could cook dinner for a family of 4 while doing math homework at the kitchen counter. No one ever asked if I needed help. But Michael? He was the golden child, the boy of the house. He didn't take out the trash unless someone begged. He could fail a test and get a pat on the head. He could crash his bike and my parents would act like the world had ended. Meanwhile, I got a stomach flu once during finals week and was told, "Mind over matter, Claire. Don't be dramatic." At school, I excelled. Straight A's, student council, perfect attendance. But there were no framed certificates on our fridge. No proud phone calls to relatives. The only time my mom showed up was when Michael was performing in the school band. She even brought flowers once. For him. Still, I didn't rebel. I didn't scream or sulk or beg for more. I just worked harder. Got my first job at 15, sweeping floors at a bakery down the block. I handed over half my paycheck every week without complaint. Rent, they said. Contribution. Responsibility. I thought that made me part of the team. That if I just gave enough, I'd finally be seen. College was never in the family's plans for me. Not because they didn't think I could, but because girls don't need a degree to settle down. So I went to community college anyway, paid my own tuition, took the bus every morning at 6 a.m. while my friends drove their used Hondas to state schools. I graduated with a business certificate, got an entry-level job at a local bank, and slowly started building the life I thought I deserved. One where I didn't have to ask for space or permission, but I still gave back. Always. When the pipes burst in our old house, I paid the plumber. When my dad's truck broke down, I fronted the repair bill. When Michael wanted to fly to Phoenix to visit his dream girl, guess who booked the flight? Me. And every time I told myself, this is what good daughters do. Until one day I looked around and realized no one was doing anything for me. The love I thought I was earning was just silent expectation. The house I thought I was helping build wasn't mine in their eyes. I was never the daughter. I was the resource, the backbone, the one they knew would always say yes, until I didn't. It started like a dream. "We're finally going to build," my father said one Sunday afternoon, flipping through a brochure of pre-designed homes while Michael scrolled on his phone. "It's time we stop throwing money into that moldy old place and start fresh." I remember the way my mother smiled at me then, hopeful, almost tender. "We've always wanted a proper home, Claire. Somewhere Michael can bring his future wife. Somewhere you can have your own space, too, for once. Don't you think it's time?" I did. I really did. Our old house had creaked with every step, smelled like rain on bad wood, and its walls held more fights than memories. I imagined a clean slate, new floors, a garden, a kitchen where I could finally bake in peace. I imagined Christmases without leaking ceilings, birthdays with enough room for friends. But dreams cost money, and no one in that room had good credit, except me. I was 26, employed full-time, with a modest but spotless financial record. When the bank officer pulled me aside and said, "You'd qualify for a mortgage on your own," I felt proud. Nervous, but proud. I told my parents. They didn't hesitate. "Of course you'll be on the loan," my mother said. "We'll all contribute. We'll split the bills. It'll be our house, Claire. A family home." I believed them. I signed the mortgage. I made the down payment. I cut back on everything, lattes, vacations, even new clothes, to stay ahead on payments. When unexpected construction delays doubled the drywall budget, I dipped into my savings. When Michael wanted to turn the basement into a studio space, I paid for the extra wiring and soundproofing. At night, I'd sit in the half-finished living room, sipping tea on a folding chair, and think this is worth it. One day, this will be the kind of home where peace actually lives. And for a while it was. We moved in that spring. The paint was fresh, the sun hit the windows just right, and I planted daisies by the mailbox like my grandma used to. My mother even hugged me on move-in day. She said, "You've done something good for this family." That was the last time I heard her say anything kind, because slowly things shifted. The guest bedroom I decorated with lavender and soft lighting became Michael's official room. Then Lana moved in, unannounced, and my mother started leaving passive-aggressive notes about me taking too long in their kitchen. They began inviting relatives over and introducing the house as ours, never once saying my name. I came home from work one day and found my bookshelf gone. My books packed into boxes in the garage. Michael needed space, they said. "You weren't really using that wall, were you?" I laughed at first, thought it was temporary, but then it happened again, and again. My father began making decisions about maintenance, calling plumbers, hiring roofers, and never consulted me. The bills, of course, were left on the counter with a sticky note. "Can you cover this? We'll settle up later." They never did. I didn't want to believe it. I kept telling myself, they just forgot or didn't think. They're under stress. They'll remember that I made this house happen. But deep down, I knew. They never saw it as mine. They never even saw me. Just a paycheck in a daughter's skin. It all boiled over the day I came home to find my bedroom door wide open and Lana's clothes in my closet. I stood there for a moment, silent, trying to process what I was seeing. My carefully folded sweaters had been shoved to one side. Her heels were lined up where my books used to be. A curling iron sizzled softly on my nightstand like a small, mocking laugh. When I found my mother in the kitchen, she didn't even flinch. "Oh, Lana's just using your room for a bit," she said while chopping carrots. "Michael's studio setup, downstairs, needs space to breathe. You understand." Understand? That word rang in my ears like a fire alarm. "You didn't ask," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is my room, my house, and you didn't ask." My father looked up from the TV. "Claire, don't be dramatic. You barely sleep here these days, anyway. You work all the time. Lana's here full-time now. She needs a place that feels like home." I stared at him, at both of them, as if they had somehow erased everything I had done. Every check I'd written, every decision I'd made, every inch of space I'd given them out of love, all gone. But it wasn't just the room. It was everything. The kitchen, once my quiet place to unwind, had become off-limits unless I wanted a lecture about making too much noise or hogging the stove. My morning routine was disrupted by Lana's skincare rituals. My bathroom shelf had been overtaken by her essentials, and when I moved her items aside, she left a note. "Please respect shared space." Shared space, in the house that I paid for. The tension thickened every day. Meals were eaten in silence. The TV was always set to shows I didn't like. My brother, once barely civil, now acted like I was invading his territory. And my parents, they stopped calling me by name. Just her. Just, "Can you do this?" Or, "Why did she say that?" One night, I overheard them in the living room. "She's making things harder than they need to be," my father muttered. "She's always been stubborn," my mother replied. "Honestly, I don't think she even appreciates what we've done for her." What they'd done for me. I gripped the stair railing so tightly my knuckles cracked. My jaw ached from how hard I clenched it. I didn't say a word, just climbed the stairs and cried into a pillow that no longer smelled like home. I started sleeping in my car some nights, not because I had to, but because I couldn't breathe inside that house anymore. I stopped stocking the fridge, stopped paying the water bill. I wanted to see what they would do when the tap ran dry, when their world, a world they'd built on my back, started to crack. They didn't ask. They just assumed I'd fix it, like always, but I didn't. And when the power flickered one morning and the coffee machine sputtered to a stop, my mother turned to me with an icy tone. "You're being irresponsible, Claire. We can't keep living like this." I looked at her, looked past her, then said, slowly, "Maybe you shouldn't." Her face went blank. She didn't get it, not yet. But she would. Soon. It happened on a Saturday. I had just come back from a 10-hour shift at the bank, my body aching, my mind numb, when I walked into the kitchen and found everyone sitting there waiting. My father at the head of the table, hands folded like a disappointed principal. My mother beside him, lips pursed. Michael on the couch, trying to look serious but smirking behind his coffee mug. And Lana, of course, sitting with her legs crossed like she belonged there more than I did. I didn't sit down. "We've been talking," my mother began, her voice sugar-coated and brittle, "about how things have been uncomfortable around here." I stayed quiet. My father leaned forward. "Claire, this isn't working. The energy in this house, it's toxic. You're making everyone walk on eggshells." My mouth dropped open, but no sound came out. "You barely speak to anyone," he continued. "You refuse to contribute lately. And now the bills are going unpaid. That's not how families function." Unpaid? I almost laughed. I had paid every major bill in this house for 5 years, and the moment I stopped letting them bleed me dry, suddenly I was the problem. Michael jumped in. It's not like we're trying to push you out, but Lana's got a lot on her plate right now, and it's hard for her to feel settled when there's this constant tension. This constant tension, caused by them taking over my bedroom, my bathroom, my kitchen, my life, and somehow I was the villain. Then my mother dropped the final blow. We think it's best if you moved out, just until things cool off. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, to list every dollar, every sacrifice, every hour I'd worked overtime just to keep this roof over their heads. But I didn't. I just looked around that room, at their faces so smug, so sure, and realized something terrifyingly clear. They never saw me as family. I was the help, the financier, the convenience, and now that I was no longer useful, I was expendable. You want me gone? I whispered. In the house I paid for. My father didn't flinch. You're being dramatic again. We'll figure something out. But for now, it's better this way. Better for who? My hands were shaking as I went upstairs. I didn't pack neatly. I threw clothes into a duffel bag, grabbed my laptop and a few files, and didn't even bother saying goodbye. No one followed me out. No one stopped me. The sun was setting as I pulled away from the curb, the house glowing softly in the golden light, like it was still mine but no longer home. That night I sat in my car again. Same parking lot, same ache in my chest, but this time there was no confusion, no shock, just a slow, burning clarity. They had taken everything they could from me, and now I would take it all back. The following Monday, I walked into my attorney's office with a manila folder and a calmness that didn't belong to me, not yet. Her name was Laurel Jensen, sharp suit, sharper mind. She had helped me 2 years ago with a refinance on the mortgage when interest rates dropped. Back then, she'd said, "It's smart you're putting everything in your name. Things can get messy when families blur lines." I didn't take it seriously then, but I should have. Now, I placed the folder on her desk. Inside were the mortgage statements, the deed transfer, and every receipt tied to the house, from the plumbing overhaul to the new roof I paid for entirely last summer. She flipped through each document slowly, methodically, like a surgeon preparing for delicate work. Then she looked up and said the words I needed to hear. "It's your house. Legally, indisputably. They have no claim." I didn't cry. Not yet. But something inside me let go. Just a little. She drafted a formal notice to vacate, giving them 30 days to leave the premises. It felt cold, but so had their betrayal. And unlike them, I had the law. I had receipts. I had a spine they hadn't counted on. The papers were served the next day. I didn't go myself. I hired a process server, a quiet woman in a gray windbreaker, who later told me my mother slammed the door in her face. Michael called me that night, furious. "What the hell is this?" he barked. "You're evicting your own parents? Your own brother?" I stayed calm. "You asked me to leave. I'm just doing what you suggested." "You've changed," he spat. "This is heartless." "No," I said, "this is boundaries." The next few weeks were chaos. They tried everything: guilt, threats, calls to extended family. My aunt from Seattle left a voicemail calling me cruel. My father sent an email with a link to a GoFundMe titled, "Help us keep our family home." But the comments turned against them quickly when someone found the county records and realized the house was never theirs. I didn't post a single word. I didn't need to. Laurel handled the legalities with elegance. When my mother tried to claim she had paid for furniture and emotional equity, Laurel responded with a single sentence: "If your client can provide bank statements, we're happy to consider reimbursement." She couldn't. 28 days after the notice was served, they moved out. Quietly. Michael left first, tail between his legs, loading boxes into a borrowed pickup truck. Lana wasn't there. Rumor had it she'd broken up with him after realizing his house wasn't really his. My parents stayed until the last hour. I watched from down the block as they carried suitcases and shut the door without once looking back. When I walked in that night, the house was still. No TV blaring, no perfume in the hallway, no judgment in the air, just me and silence. I ran my hand along the banister, sat on the couch, looked out the window as the sun dipped below the pine trees, and I finally let myself breathe. The first night alone in the house felt surreal. I walked barefoot through the rooms, hearing my own footsteps echo off walls that had once been filled with noise and tension. The couch still had the indent where Michael used to slouch. The kitchen counter bore faint coffee stains from my mother's morning rituals. There was a single earring on the bathroom shelf, probably Lana's, and I tossed it in the trash without hesitation. I didn't clean that night. I didn't rearrange anything. I just sat and let the stillness settle. For the first time in years, I wasn't holding anything up. No one to cook for, no one to rescue, no one to prove myself to, just silence and me. Over the next few weeks, I began reclaiming the house in small, intentional ways. I painted the guest room a soft green and turned it into a reading nook. I replaced the dining table with a smaller one, just enough for me and maybe a friend or two. I pulled weeds from the backyard and planted rosemary and thyme, things that didn't demand too much but still offered life and scent. I stopped checking social media. I stopped explaining myself. And slowly, something shifted. I started to laugh again, quietly at first, then louder. I began sleeping through the night, waking up without that tightness in my chest, that dread in my stomach. I lit candles not to mask tension, but because I liked how they smelled. I even put up family photos, not of my parents or brother, but of my late grandma, my college friends, and me, smiling in places I had once forgotten I belonged. There was no grand parade of revenge, no viral moment, no public shaming, only truth and space. That was the thing about justice. It didn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it came quietly in the form of keys that unlocked a front door with no one else inside. One evening, as I stood watering the plants by the window, my neighbor, Mrs. Goodwin, waved from across the street. "Looks like the place finally belongs to you," she called out. I smiled, nodded. "It always did." She grinned. "Well, now it feels like it." That night, I wrote a letter. I didn't send it, but I needed to write it anyway. To my family, thank you for teaching me the weight of silence, the cost of loyalty, and the value of my own name. I don't hate you. I just don't owe you anymore. I folded it, tucked it in the back of a drawer, and turned off the light. As I lay in bed, my bed in my room in my house, I stared at the ceiling and whispered the last words that mattered. I'm home.